Good morning. Welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. All right, we've been talking about trust this morning because we've gone beyond, right? We want to get, yeah, you can go get that little, right? I'm diminishing it immediately. That little will and powers of attorney and that. And for some, it is, I just don't want to bother with all this. Well, really, let me explain something to you about how we work, okay? It's a team approach. So one of the things there, yes, you're going to have to sit through a couple of meetings and fill out some, we're going to help you basically define what you're looking to accomplish. And so it's going to take a little bit of work there, but that's really not much different than what you're going to go through for a will anyway. And here's the other part. Beyond that, the real work we're going to do for you, okay? Russ is going to do up your documents. He's going to take care of real estate. He's going to make sure all the language is in there correctly to do the things that you want it to do. And in my office, we're going to help you with regarding, with the things that are needed as far as any beneficiary designation changes, any properly titling the assets to accomplish these so that what we're setting up will work. But we're going to do all that work for you. You don't have to worry about it. You're just going to sit there and sign your autograph. How easy is that? Okay, and one of them is going to be to a check, by the way, for the documents. Just saying. But you're going to find it to be very reasonable because I've shopped around, so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to the cost of these things around the area. So you'll be, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised there. Now the other part of it is when we come into the planning and you're talking about how to structure these things. With is the coordination, and this goes with planning in general. When I talk about the team approach, it can be when we're talking tax planning and I'm working with your tax person to make sure if we're doing Roth conversions, if we're selling off assets, that we're making sure in advance what the tax consequences are going to be and how to minimize those taxes. Make sure we're not triggering any hidden taxes like AMT, the alternative minimum tax, or the new excise tax that basically comes in depending on the size of the amount of gains that you may be capturing in a given year. So we go through all that so we know, and that way we can also determine, well, do we want to do this in 1 year, or do we want to spread this over a number of years? So when we get into whether it's real estate or stocks, mutual funds, whatever it is, we put a plan together and we know in advance what's going to happen because we work together. With Russ, it's that same concept, right? We work together. We make sure then that I was talking before the break about a family where we had the two children, his two sons, that were going to receive this money, and the money was going to be building up in the trust, okay? Well, there are a couple of things that come into play there. And Russ, we were talking a little bit on the break about one of them, how it's invested is going to determine what the taxation, of course, is, but also the structure of the trust has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, exactly. And so the point that I was discussing with Hank is that whenever you're putting an estate plan together, you have to do so not only based on what your wishes are and how the assets will be distributed, but also what income and estate tax effects may apply to that particular plan. And when Hank was discussing the whole idea of keeping assets in a trust for a period of time, the trust itself, you want to make sure that if there's any income generated on those assets, it's either tax-free or tax-deferred or however it's structured. And that's where Hank comes into play, because he can structure the investments inside the trust so they're not going to throw off any taxable income, or very little, hopefully. Why is that important? Well, when a trust has to report taxable income, it does so at a much higher rate generally than an individual does. So you don't want to throw off a lot of taxable income. So there needs to be coordination there. Likewise, if we're putting together a plan like that, the trust can be structured where instead of taxing the trust, the income gets taxed at the beneficiary's rates. Exactly. And that's another way of taking care of that issue. But again, it requires coordination between the attorney and the financial advisor to make sure you get that right.
And this goes to the tax planning piece in general. So when we're looking at, well, which one is the best? Well, it depends on their situation. If the beneficiaries are going to receive this, or say in a very high tax bracket, then is it good for them to receive that it could be paying out, the money stays in the trust, but the taxable portion that could be generated within that, those gains or interest or dividends or whatever it might be within the trust, rather than them get a 1099 and maybe be paying at a higher tax level, why not wait until they're retired their income and tax level is probably going to be lower, then so we can defer it, and then we can have it pay out to them. So how we structure the investments, how we take care of the payouts to them, all that's built in up front, and we can have the flexibility to where if we want to peel off some money, if it's a good year to do that, maybe they've got some losses that can offset gains. There's only any number of ways that can come into play. We've got the flexibility built in, and because we're working together, we're making sure that one's not doing something counterproductive to the other or creating problems. So it's so important that you have that, that's when you're working with your advisors, your financial advisor, your attorney that's taking care of your estate planning and stuff, your accountant that's taking care of your taxes. And if you don't have a team like that, guess what? We have one. We can help you with that. And in fact, to that end, again, for the first 10 callers, here we go. We're going to get the number up on the screen for you. You can call my office, 615-376-5325. If you don't have a team and you'd like a team, come see me because I can help you with that. All right, I can bring people like Russ in, Russ is excellent when it comes to estate planning and doing your documents, and you'll be able to meet with him. You don't have to pay that initial consultation fee. That's one of the benefits that you can get if you're one of the first 10 callers to my office, 615-376-5325. Same thing goes with taxes. If you don't have an accountant, I can bring someone in to help you with taxes as well, and we'll work together again to make sure that we get the best plan for you. So again, this is a free retirement income analysis. It's a comprehensive financial plan that includes talking to you about Social Security, how to minimize taxes on Social Security, when the best time to take it is, the Medicare decisions you have to make, talking about your investments, how to minimize taxes on your investments while at the same time getting the most return and minimizing risk as well, the volatility in your portfolio. Estate planning, as we're talking about this morning, getting into that part. What happens? So we're going to take care of all the things. What happens while you're living? What you want to have happen? Making sure you're not going to run out of money. You're going to be able to attain and maintain your standard of living and your quality of life. And then when you're gone, how to make sure that it goes in the most tax efficient and utilizing asset protection strategies to your family. All right, to take care of your loved ones. So make sure that your wishes come true both during your lifetime and when you're gone. So 615, first 10 callers, 615-376-5325. Jess and Tess are standing by. They'll get your information. They'll send you out a little packet to fill out. They'll get you a checklist of things to bring with to your appointment with me, and they'll get all that scheduled. And again, we'll be able to have Russ either at the initial or at a subsequent meeting. Once we've determined what your needs are, that's usually the best time to bring Russ in, because then I can save Russ time. I can kind of give him a lot of information up in advance so he comes prepared and we're able to get the most out of the meeting with him as well. So there it is, 615-376-5325, first 10 callers. And when you come in to see me, I'll give you a free copy of my book, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom in Retirement. And you'll be able to give a little study ahead of time. You can prepare, all right, before you come in and know what to expect. All right, there it is. Now, when we're talking about irrevocable trust, we were talking about ways that they can be utilized to protect your family and to let it, whether it's a community property spouse and you're giving some additional protection for that surviving spouse, whether it's for your children and ways that you can protect them in many ways, when they receive money. And here's one of those. When we get into special needs, I mentioned the example of the gentleman creating private pensions in essence for his children. Another way that comes into play is that maybe a child, as Russ had said, is not as responsible, not able to take care of things in that example, but it may go beyond that. All right, we've had many times, unfortunately, more than I'd like to think about, where there's been substance abuse issues and these kind of things where really they can't even participate fully in that. It's a little different in the way those work. When I remember one that we had where the gentleman was literally, the beneficiary was a homeless person. Mm-hmm. And his father had set up a special trust for him, and we had an independent trustee in that scenario. Mm-hmm. He still came in, and I was the investment advisor on the trust. We would still meet with him, the trustee, myself, and the beneficiary, and we would go over what his needs were. And we got everything set up so that we got him an apartment, and we had an allowance and made sure he had food and clothes and all the things he needed. that he was taken care of the way his father wanted it to be, and he was safe for once. That kind of thing is, you know, another way that we can use trust.
Yeah, and actually, if you think about what would have been the result if those assets had gone directly to that person, I can guarantee you they'd be gone within months. And instead, what the parent lovingly has set up, and I say lovingly because a lot of parents don't necessarily go the extra step to figure out exactly what needs to be done for their best interests of their children. So if you're setting up a trust for your child who's struggling, no matter what it is, it's a loving response to a problem that will probably never go away. And what Hank had mentioned was a great illustration of where a trust does work, where you have this coordination between the trustee, the advisor, and the beneficiary in determining what a monthly allowance can be and how that should be paid out. And one thing, again, this goes back to the coordination. A lot of times I'll see estate plans where maybe the attorney did prepare the trust for the benefit of the child, but then the financial advisor maybe didn't change the beneficiary designations on the retirement accounts, and they ended up going directly to the child. That's where, if you're going to create the plan, you want to make sure that everything goes according to the plan. And that's one of the overlooked items that I see, because we do a lot of estate and trust administration as well in my office, and unfortunately once a person dies you can't go back and fix it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, beneficiary, this is one of those areas of coordinating, again, the effort. So when Russ gets everything set up, it comes back to my office, and now we make sure that beneficiary designations are done correctly. Here's one of the other parts, because of the function that I serve, all right, is that when I'm as a financial advisor and planner and doing the comprehensive planning, I meet regularly with my clients. See, with Russ's work, once it's done, it's less frequently that he might meet with. He sends out regular letters. He's great about staying in touch with people and offering his services if they have changes in their life and they want to meet with him to talk about those. And I don't know, is it every 3 to 5 years, I think you're sending out as well? 2 to 3 years. So frequently, you know, many attorneys don't do that. Once your documents are done, and you never hear or see from them again, or see them again. Well, one of the things with planning is I meet with my clients at least twice a year. We want to get into tax planning, so that's one typical of the meetings that we might have, as well as then, you know, both when we set something in motion, then we want to check in and see how it's doing. So there's two parts to that. We've set a course, we've set the plan, now we want to make sure we stay on course. And as I said, life happens, changes come into your life. We want to adapt the plan to make sure that it accommodates those changes and you still are able to accomplish your goals. So this comes into play where I'm then checking more frequently with clients about, you know, how are those, you know, making sure the beneficiary designations stay up to date. If we change an asset from one institution to another, that's an area, again, that we want to make sure then that when it goes to this new institution, that we keep the appropriate beneficiary designations in place so that the plan stays intact and doesn't, you know, get blown up, if you will, and not do the things that you want it to do. And this is when we do our regular reviews, we're checking not only beneficiary designations, but if you have another asset, if you maybe are buy or sell a home, all of those things we need to make sure that the estate planning is taken into consideration, and whether it's changing the name on an asset or whether it's just the beneficiary designation, that we keep those up to date. One of the things that we get into when it comes to planning as well, we've talked about in this most recent one a more extreme example of how, you know, this gentleman would come in, we would sit together at my office, we would talk to him about what his needs were, and then little things that we kind of take for granted, like he had some dental needs, he needed that taken care of. So we set everything up, we made sure we got him into a dentist. And you can't, if you've ever been around, if you're one of those that have children with substance abuse, you know you just can't give them money. Okay, it's much like, you know, you give them money, you don't know where it's going to go. Even though they say it's for a certain thing, it's probably not going to get to that end. So we would have, the trustee would pay those things directly. So the rent was paid directly, utilities were paid directly out of the trust, not given to him. He was given an allowance, but any of those bills, medical bills, everything were paid directly to that, to the doctors, to the dentist, those kind of things. So he got the services he needed, and we protected him and kept him safe in that process. Now there's another, we're going to talk about, we're going to take another break, all right? But when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how this works now with special needs children, and how what is called a special needs trust, how that plays in, and how there's the similarities and yet the differences in what we're looking to protect against there. All right, so we're going to get into that as soon as we return. Join us here. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.
The time has come to enjoy your golden years, but have you saved enough?
I'm Hank Parrott. Don't just survive in retirement, thrive. Call me today at Estate and Financial Strategies or tune in for the Retirement Report each and every weekend on News Channel 5 Plus.
You've been smart and saved for your